Welcome to Sharpe Insights, conversations with your plan giving experts, a podcast for development professionals. Whether you're new to the field or looking to enhance your existing program, we will provide practical tips, expert advice, and real-world stories to deepen your understanding of plan giving. If you're committed to securing long-term support for your nonprofit, you've come to the right place.
Welcome to Sharpe Insights, conversations with your plan giving experts. I'm your host, Grant Miller. The National Association of Charitable Gift Planners describes plan giving as both an art and a science. The science brings structure and technical expertise. The art builds trust, shaping the conversations that lead to meaningful and lasting impact. Balancing the two isn't always easy. And for many organizations, it's where strategy and practice either take hold or fall short. The nonprofit community is fortunate to have an organization like the CGP to support gift planners in their efforts. Joining us today is Michael Kenyon. Michael is president and CEO of the National Association of Charitable Gift Planners, where he works with a national network of professionals to advance the field. A former executive director of the Percussive Arts Society, Michael began his career as a musician before transitioning into nonprofit leadership. Michael, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's zoom out a little bit. And for those who may not be familiar, can you provide your overview, elevator pitch about the National Association of Charitable Gift Planners and what the benefits are of being a member and what resources you provide the nonprofit community?
Sure. So CGP is a national membership association. We serve all professionals involved with charitable gift planning. So not only the charitable gift planning fundraisers, but also the allied professionals who are involved in charitable gift planning in a broader definition. We have approximately 6,000 members and a network of about 70 councils throughout the country. And our mission is based on three kind of what we call strategic pillars, and that's awareness, excellence, and community. So we bring together the broader gift planning community as a professional network. We educate our members, advocate for charitable giving and the sector as a whole, and provide community where we can all learn from each other and advance the field. So what are the benefits? I think one of the strongest benefits is the community, right? This is the professional network where what we call your professional home. It's not only the place where you can learn, and we can talk more about that, but there's also where you connect with other individuals. Our organization members come from the full spectrum of the nonprofit sector. So whether it's a large organization, a small organization, regardless of whether it's higher education, healthcare, social services, environment, all of the different areas in the nonprofit sector. If you're practicing charitable gift planning, you can join this community and learn from all of those individuals across that network. And then also build your own network so that you're able to advance your career, find opportunities that you might not have had otherwise. Within the organization, you have the opportunity to present, whether that's a webinar or presenting on a national conference, but also there's volunteer committees, there's other opportunities in which you can join and become more involved. And we find that now that we're 35, 40 years getting into that area, we are in a unique position in that we still have some of our original voices that started this organization and were true leaders in the field of charitable gift planning as it advanced in 80s and 90s. And then we have a large cohort of emerging professionals who are coming into the organization. And it's that cross connection on both ways, kind of, I mean, I hate to say that intergenerational learning and intergenerational connection, but it's true. It really happens, and it makes this organization very rich. And also the character of our members and the fact that they're very sharing and they're very willing to share their expertise, be open, warm with each other and help each other, that really makes this a valuable organization to be a part of.
Sounds like it. Sounds like there's a lot of great resources and experience and opportunities for organizations to look into the CGP. One thing that's interesting to me is my background is mostly in creative writing, and that's kind of how I got into this work, writing about plan giving issues and telling donor stories and that sort of thing. And I really appreciate how the CGP frequently categorizes plan giving as both an art and a science. And I'm definitely more in kind of that abstract art brain than I am of the science. But you recommend a balance of both. I was wondering if you could talk more about that and why it's important for an organization to find a balance between the art and the science of a plan giving strategy.
Sure. So art, when we say art, we're really thinking in the broadest definition of art. So the science is a little easier. We talk about that. Our members and anyone that's in this field, they have to be technically proficient, right? They need to have skills because they need to get everything right. These are important transactions between both the organizations and the donors. So the science, the execution of that is important. It needs to be correct. It needs to be right. We need to be trained and do that. The art of charitable gift planning really evolves around the idea of the relationship, not only between a charitable gift planner and the donor or the charitable gift planner and the organization, but where all of those elements and the allied professionals around those donors, right? They all influence this, but is to kind of, in its purest sense, is to bring about the meaning and the generosity of the donor with the mission of the organization in a relationship that's developed over time that builds trust and really works to find what is most meaningful for everyone in that process. So there isn't a single road, there isn't a single relationship, there aren't sales techniques, words that you use that, oh, someone's going to make this gift or that gift. It's really about this continuum of relationship that ends in perhaps even an intergenerational or a multi-generational gift.
Yeah, I appreciate that because, my son's in the third grade and he complains about doing his math homework. And I always tell him the great thing about math is there are correct answers and there are incorrect answers. And that might be daunting to some people, but I think in a lot of aspects of our lives, it's kind of a luxury to be able to just say there's a right way to do this and a wrong way to do this. But then there also has to be nuance. And I think that's probably where the malleability of the art brains come in. Well, foundational to all science and technical inquiry is kind of a universal standard. And the CGP is developing national standards for charitable gift planning. So, what prompted that effort, and what are some of the key principles from those standards that every nonprofit should understand and try to implement?
Yeah, so the National Standards for Gift Planning Success is the formal title of that NSGPS. So you get the GPS thing in there, is really a set of best practices. So even though it says national standards, they're not defined scientific standards that you're going to say, these are quantifiable. What they really are best practices in grouped in three major areas that when you work in these areas and follow these best practices, you're most likely to have a successful gift planning program. There's variance in that. Organizations are very different, so they would follow those standards perhaps in a different way or be able to take on some of the standards, but not all of the standards because they get pretty complex for a robust, successful gift planning program. We know not everyone is there, so they can work into those practices, adopting some of the primary practices and moving forward as their program evolves. The idea of this came out of actually where we were trying to find the science. Basically, we wanted to come out with metrics, definable metrics for gift planners that would really help them have quantifiable data that they could work with for their positions. It's very common that charitable gift planners get kind of grouped together when it comes to metrics and what they're expected to do with major gift officers and other people within the development department that doesn't really understand the timing, the time involved in developing those relationships and the amount of time to bring in a deferred gift. So we put together a task force. We worked with members of the Fundraising Effectiveness Project and diligently worked to try to come up with standards. And the biggest challenge was individuals, the nomenclature was not consistent. Some of the counting practices weren't consistent. The gathering data wasn't consistent. And there was just simply no way to come up with a truly definable area. It's still the Rosetta Stone for us to find, to work with. We'll continue working on that. What came out of that process was the National Standards for Gift Planning Success, which is really a set of best practices that a program committed to and work with will find success. And that was how that evolved.
Excellent. And those best practices can be, with a few variations here and there, applied to an organization of any size. Is that
right? You still need buy-in from your board and your commitment to say, we are going to work on that. Certain aspects of policies need to be in place to be able to accept gifts. You need to be able to, donor prospect data, that kind of thing. And then stewardship. I mean, those you have to be able to pull together some level of stewardship, and then it gets more complicated and more in-depth as you continue to build your program.
Okay, I want to pivot just a little bit. Recently in Washington, there has been a heightened amount of, I would say, scrutiny on the nonprofit sector and lots of other nonprofits. What are some of the specific actions that the CGP is taking to advocate for nonprofits in the nonprofit world?
Yeah, so it's interesting times, isn't it? So there are a couple different avenues here. One, most of our advocacy is not political, right? We really stay away entirely from the political aspect of that. We have organizations in our membership that I am sure are diametrically opposed to each other politically. We support the nonprofit sector as a whole with the structure as it is currently defined in law. And we also support the Johnson Amendment, clearly, which the Johnson Amendment says that a nonprofit can't get involved in campaigns and can't be involved in advocating for their candidate. And there's been some challenges to that recently. The court case turned that down, but we expect that to be appealed. The Johnson Amendment has been kind of attacked at different times. It's been on the legislative agenda over a period of years. We've always been able to hold it back. And the vast majority of nonprofit organizations are in support of the Johnson Amendment. No one wants to be in their local community and feel that if they don't support this mayoral candidate or that mayoral candidate, that on the backside of that election, they may not be a favorite organization. I mean, it's just, nonprofit sector is not built, not designed, never has functioned with politics in mind. So that Johnson Amendment is really important to keep. So far, we've been able to maintain that, and certainly we participate in advocating for that.
I had a previous guest on, Allie Bedford, and we talked a lot about, I think times for nonprofits are always challenging in ways, and there's always opportunities in ways. And we were just thinking about using the idea of what can be seen right now as maybe challenges or increased scrutiny, or I think a lot of organizations might be moving through the world right now with a little bit of, doom and gloom maybe. But thinking about all of these issues as opportunities, what are some opportunities that are really coming to the surface with everything that's going on now?
So I think, certainly we all talk about the great transfer of wealth and the fact that there's a whole lot of money that's going to move within the next 20 years. I think that clearly just by the fact that there is a lot of revenue there, a lot of money there, that is an opportunity for us. I think we have to, and organizations really have to pay attention to where that wealth is and to make sure that they are able to address that. What we're seeing is there's all of the Russell James research of where the wealth is, and it's in assets. And there's a tremendous amount of wealth in assets, and there's very little comparatively in cash. So everyone who's chasing cash gets farther and farther behind those groups and organizations that are really working on assets, whether that's just appreciated stock on up through the most complex gifts. That is where the progress is being made and where more money is being distributed. That's not an easy nut to crack, so to speak, in terms of it requires organizations to have policies that can accept that. It requires individuals to become competent so that they can recognize those assets in conversations and start to open up conversations. What we're seeing is that the vast majority of these gifts of assets are going to a very small percentage of the organizations that are prepared to accept them, which is leaving a lot of organizations out. And I think there's lots of factors involved in that, in wealth and how wealth distributes charitable giving and all of those facts. So this is not a simple answer in any way, but all nonprofits need to work on focusing on gifts of assets and working on their competency to do that so that they can become more involved in that wealth transfer that's happening. I mean, and you say, well, is it already happening? It's been happening. All of there's all the different kind of opinions of where it's at and how it's flowing, or whether it will even flow into the nonprofit sector. But if we don't get involved in the game, we won't be participants. And that's going to be really important. We focus, a lot of our education kind of focuses on assets. We're working on educating people, bringing that more awareness of that. Certainly our conference has sessions and things like that that are bringing that forward for folks to participate.
So you're basically saying that, if you are a nonprofit organization, continue doing small campaigns for cash and to get checks now, but really focus on a plan giving program. Like if you don't have one, implement one. If you have one, make sure that everyone knows what they're doing, because that is where, to use a cliche, the bread and butter of a nonprofit success will be in the plan giving.
Right. That's where your success is going to be. You have to stay with it. You have to keep working at it. And you can do it incrementally. You can do it small. It's not insurmountable. It can be started with a simple bequest program, a simple drip marketing campaign. And you just start at that basic level and keep working through that, bringing more awareness to all of the individuals that are involved with your organization, both internally and externally, about you have these programs, and start to build on this and continue to do that. It's a well-known fact that if you have a strong endowment, you're going to be able to handle the ups and downs of the economic turmoil, whatever it is. You are going to have a more consistent pipeline of giving if you have developed a program over a number of years, because these pipelines are there. Even our organization, as small as it is, and we're not, working with wealthy people, even our members, we have a legacy society that has never received a gift, thankfully, because it's not there. But we started it 5 years ago. I don't know when our first gift will be, but I know that pipeline already has more money in it than our current endowment, which is very small. But it already has more money. So I know long after I'm gone, there will be more money coming into the organization than we've created in our endowment over the last 30 plus years.
Well, the great wealth transfer is on the horizon, or is happening, depending on who you talk to. Are there any other trends that the CGP is seeing that is kind of shaping the future of plan giving that we should be paying attention to?
Well, there's probably lots, not necessarily all positive. CGP has always promoted charitable giving on the broadest sense, because we feel that even though we are working kind of at the top of the pyramid on these gifts, and maybe even the donors that we have are at the top of the pyramid, you don't have a top of a pyramid if you don't have a large base. And we are equally concerned about the lack or the decline in the numbers of households giving. And we believe that charitable giving should be as broad as possible in society as a whole, because if everyone gave a little bit, it would change the whole face of the nonprofit sector and what's available. So it's not just going at the very top. It's about how do we understand that society as a whole needs to be involved in charity. And the flip side of that is the less people that get involved in charitable giving view those that do differently. And they say, well, are they getting some kind of benefit that I'm not giving because I don't practice this? I don't actually have the experience of charitable giving, of making a difference in my community, of what that feels like, how that impacts me personally and my family and my community. And so if we relegate charitable giving to only a small sector of society, it becomes much more fragile. And so I feel like there are trends that we need to make sure that we are participating in promoting charitable giving as broadly as we can in society, making sure that we understand that charitable giving is giving money away. It's not a tax loophole. It's not an evasion of something. No matter what you do, if you're giving money away, you are giving money away. You're not getting paid to give it away. You are giving money away. And that is a level of generosity. And we need to make sure that that doesn't somehow get flipped, politicized. I mean, there's a lot of things going on. We want to make sure that we are promoting the philosophy of charitable giving in our society and what it does to benefit each other.
I think that's really important and a really good point. And a great thing for organizations to keep in mind is that organizations are more in control of a narrative, I think, than we think that we are. And awareness is storytelling in a way. and just making sure that everyone, I guess, just understands the importance of giving and, like you said, giving your money away and just spreading the word. So I think that's something that we could all keep in mind. So the CGP has recently relaunched the Journal of Gift Planning. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Well, how about, can you talk about the journal and how that could be a valuable resource for gift officers and planning departments?
Sure. So we've brought that back, and I have to credit Brian Clance for really spearheading that effort over a period of years for us to bring back the Journal of Gift Planning in an age where there's just a plethora of information. We think that it's really important that we have information that gives us, that is kind of the standard of information and a source where anybody in gift planning will know that that information is the very best information available and is accurate. And we've launched our initial issue in October, several great articles on that. Our next issue is coming out, I believe, at the end of May, and then we have two more this year. Our longer term goals is that we will bring back the archives so that we'll also have that rich history of all the previous articles that were published between approximately 2000 and 2010, 2011. So we were just talking about the importance of philanthropy and what it means about that. I know that in the May issue, there's going to a great article coming out, Craig Ruck, really talking about the challenge of we need to not talk about tax incentives and talk about the philosophy of giving. There's some really good articles and in this coming up issue that actually kind of address that, as well as those technical articles that we may not get, you may not see otherwise, and you're not going to get in a quick webinar or find out there easily accessible. So we try and get the deep information, but then also some opinion articles and some other articles to help inform in a little bit more of a serious way through that journal.
That's great. It is important for people to understand, I guess, the tax advantages and those sorts of things of particular types of gifts. But as we were talking about earlier with the narrative, is just to never forget that there is an importance to giving that lives outside of tax advantages and that sort of thing. And that's actually the most important part. And I think that that's a really important thing for organizations and potential donors to remember. And I look forward to digging into the archives of the journal. I'm glad that those are going to be accessible soon. Before we wrap, Michael, I just wanted to ask a relatively personal question. I know that your career started out in music and the arts. Is that correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What inspired you to transition to the nonprofit sector? And what is it about your background in the arts that has shaped and enriched the work that you do and your perspective in the nonprofit world?
Yeah, so it's very interconnected for me. And so I moved away from being a professional musician when I was living in New York City and really got more interested in arts administration and facilitating the arts. I've always felt that, the arts have always been important to me, but I also feel that they're important to society. So it's essential that we have a healthy arts culture. I mean, the obvious, when we look back at civilizations, what do we look at? We don't look at what cars they built. We look at their culture and their arts and how they define their philosophy, those issues. So I have this very core belief in the value of the arts. And so I felt that facilitating that was a better avenue for me personally than performance. And so I moved into that and got some education from NYU in arts administration. And then I moved into arts administration and did that for quite a while in a variety of different organizations. And then really my move to here, it was kind of along a continuum in the fact that charitable giving and raising funds and facilitating all of these organizations that do so much good for society was very attractive and very fulfilling for me because it continued that idea of doing good, right? Doing good work. And the arts, I think it's really interesting. The arts bleed into this really well because nonprofits is not a product. There's not an end point. It's the good that we do as process. And I know of no artist that I've ever met that said, I'm done with my art. One's never done with art. It's a continual evaluative process, continuing to get better. There's always something else to go to move to improve and do that. And the nonprofit work is the very same way. We approach so many things, ills of society, in different ways than we have before because we've evolved, we've moved. We don't have all of the solutions. We don't have endpoints, we have process. And so this is, to me, there's this commonality of that. And that's what holds me here.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing your story. It is inspiring. And thank you for sharing your insights and experience. For more resources on strengthening your approach to charitable gift planning, I recommend our listeners to visit the National Association of Charitable Gift Planners. Michael, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
As always, if you found today's conversation helpful, share it with your colleagues in the field and contact our Sharpe team if you have any questions. Thank you for being a part of the conversation. Until next time, I'm Grant Miller. Thanks for listening. We hope today's discussion gave you practical takeaways to grow your plan giving program. To submit questions and topics for future episodes, go to sharpegroup.org or listen to us on your favorite podcast app. If you found this podcast insightful, be sure to like, review, and subscribe. Until then, stay sharp.